Hello, Rich.
Hi, maybe. I really like what you've done with your ears.
Thank you. They're new. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, you're looking in really good shape.
Thanks. Yeah. Did something new with my eyebrows too.
Mm, yeah, it's all coming together. You blushing?
Yeah. Oh man. It really comes through here. Well, you have just done a lot of legal stuff and rented a house, I think.
Mm, mhm.
Actually, what's the status of that? I think last time we talked, you were like, oh, it's not actually fully super duper set.
It's still not super duper set. We haven't signed anything. We have a lawyer on our team who's amazing, and he's very thorough, and he's pushing every detail on the negotiations. So the negotiations are still underway. Apparently, we're moving in 2 weeks, but we haven't signed anything yet. So, yeah, the status is we've completed the fundraising. A network of friends, mostly from Twitter, have come through to lend us the money that we need to pay the startup capital. And hopefully, April 1st, we'll be moving into this big 10-bedroom house, like 45 kilometers north of Barcelona city.
Wow, that's a big move. Okay. Um, and actually, can I ask why it's been like I guess still not finalized, given how close it is to the move-in date.
Yeah, there's details about the license to use the house. And so I've done a lot of like short-term events and slightly longer-term events. So the last year we did one for 3 months where we had a house and lots of people coming through and like different workshops and co-living and stuff. And always those residential events that we've done, they've always been like um quasi-legal, you know. It's like I'll run it through my company, um, which is based in Estonia, which is good for like running a digital business. But um, the actual local law of whichever country we happen to be in when we're running events, we kind of usually just kind of ignore it. We don't pay that much attention. Um, it's not like we've got huge obligations that we should be living up to, but we always, because it's like, oh, we're going to be in town for a week. We just
Mm.
won't worry about it. But now, as we're moving towards a more permanent base, like we're going to be in this place for a minimum 1 year, probably 2 years. Um, Part of what we're prototyping is can we run this business above board and completely square with the law? And in Spain, like in a lot of Europe, that means there's a bunch of regulation, you know, like they're really quite cautious about how tourism happens especially in Barcelona. Like there's a lot of complaints about the way how the Airbnb has changed the city and so on. So like, there's a bunch of regulation about how you're allowed to use the house. And we're in the process of like working with the local government to get approval to do what we want to do there. And the final stage of the negotiation is will we have permission to do what we want to do immediately, or will that permission have to wait another 6 months or something? And depending on which one of those is the outcome, that will depend on what's the final price that we pay for the house. Because if we're officially not allowed to do the stuff we want to do, then we'll get a big discount. Um,
Get a big discount?
we should
Or
get like the landlord is going to offer us a reduced rent for 6 months if we can't legally do what we want to do.
oh wow,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
This is what happens when you have a good lawyer on your team. It's like he's actually
Yeah.
negotiating in our interests. It's really cool.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Lawyers may be underrated. All right. Um, let's see. I have so many more curiosities about that. Like if it's always that tricky, or if you knew this going in. Um, and like if this is the first time you've run into this issue because it's like the first
Mm.
time you're doing something so long term. It sounds like yes.
It's something that we've anticipated. Like,
Okay.
I come from New Zealand and there the bureaucracy is super efficient. And so like if you need something, you kind of call someone and they get it done for you immediately. And it's the opposite of that in the south of Europe. We kind of anticipated that things will take a long time, but it's just a kind of necessary step to get through for the long term. And I think probably what's most likely to happen is we're going to get the decision from the local government saying, yeah, it'll probably take 6 months, maybe it'll be 8 months, maybe it's the end of the year before we're actually formally allowed to do what we want to do there. And that just means we will keep doing what we want to do, but we'll have to be discreet. So like on the website, there'll be no photos of the house. We won't mention the town that we're in. Um, there'll be like we'll be careful about uh, what we say where. We won't be advertising in the local area. It'll be a kind of like very discreet, very much, oh, this is a house for our friends to enjoy together
Right.
doing private events, which it mostly is.
Yeah.
Um, but it
Okay.
does start to cross the threshold into like where we'll be eventually selling workshops and like going directly to customers, going to selling stuff to strangers, like just running a business. That'll happen eventually. Um, and we can't be transparent about that until later in the year when it's all squared away.
Is the landlord, I mean, it sounds pretty cool of the landlord to like be okay with this.
Yeah, well, the license is for the house, not for us. And so it's in his interest to get the house license for rural tourism,
Hmm.
um, because it's just like it's like part of the asset. So he kind of wants it done as well. He's motivated to get it done.
Okay, cool. Okay. So,
But yeah, it's like, and the plan is we're going to rent this for 1 or 2 years, and then we'd like to move to the final place that we're going to purchase. And we know that, again, once we find the final place to purchase, there'll be a whole process of legalizing things that will take. Like when we've been looking at property to buy, it's like, oh yeah, we've got all these awesome structures on the land. And by the way, 4 out of the 7 structures on this place haven't been legalized, and you're going to have to get in the engineers and architects and the local government to and pay all the fees. It's like it's part of the understood process of like taking on a new undertaking in Spain is that there's going to be a bunch of you're going to have to get to know your local bureaucracy a bunch.
yeah. Well, it sounds like you've like been building up like to, I don't know, like you've done already maybe a baby's first bureaucracy. This stuff is not a surprise for you. Um, yeah. And I'm wondering how you got to this point where suddenly you're like freaking renting a fuck ton of money from all your friends and renting a massive place for a year. Like, how did you? I know like a big theme in your work is like modularity or like no scaling up, like
Yeah.
step by step. Um, yeah. What were the last couple steps for you?
Yeah, it has been very intentional. Like, I think I kind of, to answer that question, I kind of want to illustrate a little bit of the destination and then show how the dotted lines add up to something. So like the goal that I have is very, very in simple language, it's like a thriving scene, which to me means um, overlapping communities and completely informally organized, just like a critical mass of people who know people who know people that have these kind of overlapping interests and different sort of centers of gravity. So it's like one center of gravity will be a music scene where everyone is in that scene, they're like collaborating and making music together. And then there's another cluster of it, which is like these people are really interested in entrepreneurship and they're starting businesses together. And then there's another piece, which is like, we're really politically active and we run local campaigns and like um I just want to live like the kind of the way that I lived when I was in New Zealand in my hometown where there's just a kind of extended fabric of many thousands of people who are all 1 or 2 degrees of separation away from each other. And so whenever you need something, you can always find the person who knows the right answer for you. You can always find collaborators. They're kind of like um the whole like dating and romance and finding partners and raising kids thing is like a lot more straightforward when you've got this like very high density of um, mutual understanding and a sense of trust and shared identity. Like
Wow.
I want to live like that again, but I left my hometown and I moved to the other side of the planet. And I want to see if it's possible to kind of bootstrap a scene uh, where one previously didn't exist.
Local in person.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to just be local in person. I think the local in person aspect of it is essential, but it's also got this like distributed digital cloud hovering around it. Um, which is in fact currently like the phase we're currently in. It's like all of the scene lives online, and
Yeah.
piece by piece they're getting closer and closer to be spending more time together physically.
Mhm.
So I see that like we're going through this process. We, the big we, whether you call that teapot, I don't. I feel like that term has kind of lost a lot of its usefulness. But this like extended network of people who make friends on Twitter, uh, kind of making this progress from virtual connection to local connection, and from temporary encounters to permanent
Yeah.
cohabitation. It doesn't have to be cohabiting in the same house, but like living in the same neighborhood or something, like being within walking distance of each other. Um, that there's a kind of like long, slow march across that spectrum. And this house that we're getting, I think, is like a kind of piece of scene infrastructure or an institution, an anchor institution that signals to everyone in the scene, like, oh, Barcelona is now a Schelling point. If you're not
Mhm.
sure where you want to be, this is a strong reason to be here. And some people will be doing stuff at our house, but it's more about what happens in the neighborhood, like what other activities, what other opportunities and friends and stuff that's going on. So that's the kind of like the future vision. And then your question about what were the steps that like led up to this point. Yeah, I think like systems change, which is what we're basically doing. It's like going into an environment that has a low um social capital and like bootstrapping a scene. Uh it's quite a complex and mysterious engineering job. And to me, it makes sense to take really small iterative steps and like gradually accumulate knowledge and resources and relationships and like lessons about how to do it.
Yeah.
So this one is, like I said, it's going to be 1 or 2 years long. The last one we did was 3 months. Before that, we did a whole sequence of like, camps that are like 4 or 5 days. Um, and so it's basically like increasing. I've been developing my capacity as a host by like increasing the duration of events and increasing the size, like how many people are involved, and increasing the diversity of people included, or like how yeah, like intentionally enrolling people who I know are gonna not get along so easily, like
Okay.
why you laugh?
No, just because of this rich tendency to like, or I know that you like secretly love that. I feel like getting the attendees on hard mode a bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I just think there's a kind of I don't know. There's a particular cluster of people that I'm really interested in who are brilliant and tender and kind of a bit bruised by contemporary society, and they often feel like they don't really have a place. And when
Mm.
you can get enough of them together and they all realize like, hey, there's no bullies here and we're all going to be kind, um, that you see this amazing kind of flowering process where they can kind of drop their guard and just be enthusiastic and collaborative and kind. And like, yeah, I get a real kick out of collaborating with weirdos.
Okay. Yeah. Hmm. Um, that actually makes me think of when you said like there's no bullies here. Um, it's funny because it's like you okay, you want to be inclusive of a certain type of weirdo that's normally excluded in other places,
Yeah.
but that maybe means excluding the bullies, or it still involves some kind of like gerrymandering or like picking who you have with you. And I'm wondering, like, yeah, like how you see the like choosing who's in your community and how
Yeah.
much of a choice you feel like you have in that matter, and also like how it differs for like the short-term events or like the people who you're trying to get to move to near Barcelona or something like
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think like if you go and visit like an old village in Catalonia or in Italy or in Turkey or whatever, um, a place that has really long history and dense social fabric and a thriving community, um, that to me is kind of like the mature phase. if you went there and you said like, who do you include or exclude? They'd be like, what are you talking about? You know, or if you describe, I always thought about this when I was living in Italy. I like try to explain to the local villagers that my job is community builder, and they'd just be like, what do you mean? You know, it's like this is just a thing that exists. You know, it's just like a property of existence. Um, so I think in the mature stage, a community is it has an agency all of its own that's much more powerful than any of the individual agencies. So like I don't expect at the mature phase to have any say about who's involved or who's included or anything like that. But in the seedling phase, which is what we're doing, where we're just like trying to incubate something from scratch, I think being selective about who's involved is essential. So that there's some coherence, there's some like harmony in the early phase. And it's quite a puzzle, you know, like how do you include the right people and exclude the right people, and how you do that gracefully when it's not like selling a product. Like this is a service for friends, you know. It's like these are all people I care about, and if I have to exclude someone, it's not just like yeah, refusing someone's service at a bar. It's like refusing someone's service in my heart almost, you know, like it's much more emotionally raw. And so I think it's important to have like a degree of clarity about what the terms are. And for me, the way I think about it is like I want to be hospitality maxing. Like I want to optimize for um, conviviality and connection and mutual care and stuff like that. And that is slightly different from inclusion maxing.
Okay.
And so like, for example, we're planning to have 1 week every month where we have what we call co-living week. And that's going to be a time that's like medium level of openness to new people coming in. And just come and chill with us for a week. And you can work on your projects, you can get peer support, you can enjoy being in the forest, and get a taste of living in a great, harmonious, intentional community for a week. Um, and we're trying to strike the balance there where it's like, I want to have a balance between people I already know, friends of friends, and then this third category, which is like wildcards.
Hmm.
And to get that balance right, when the balance is right, you kind of have a stable um, like a central set of norms, a center of gravity of like this is how we do things. But if you don't have that stable core, then all of the wild cards, all of the kind of strangers that are coming, sort of invite a level of complexity and chaos that it's like very likely to lead to conflict and not very likely to lead to like a fun, harmonious, easygoing, like a space where people feel relaxed and at ease. Like it's just not that likely to happen. So it's we're kind of being careful about how wide we open the door.
Okay. Hmm. Like, okay. And you have a sort of who is your core team? Like who is the like stable core vibers or something who like I don't know, keeps the center of gravity balanced or where you want it to be.
Yeah, so I think there's like concentric circles, right? So like the first ring is me and Nati. We're married, so it's like that partnership is like a really stable, high trust. Um, it's the kind of thing where it's like I've raised all the money, but she's the one that's actually going to be legally liable for all the legal stuff.
Oh. Okay.
Which is like that's the high trust dyad, right? Like we can handle that together. Um, And then slightly bigger circle is Guy and Martine, who's another couple, really old friends of Nati's. We're currently living together in this apartment, and we'll be living together on the as a new house. Um, and they're going to be less responsible on the financial and legal side of things, but like equally responsible on the day-to-day operation, taking care of the house, welcoming guests, hosting kind of thing. Um, and even in that, you know, there's already some kind of complexity or like it's not equal between the four of us. It's like
Mhm.
my reputation is on the line. in a way that it's not for the other three.
Yeah.
And
Why?
therefore, well, pardon me?
Sorry, why is that? For you, like, why are you the one? Is it because you are the one with the presence online?
It's because I'm the one that's built a public
Okay.
reputation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other three, I think they're like, I don't know, equally invested, equally knowledgeable, intelligent, skilled, committed. Like we're
Mhm.
equals in many ways, but there's a difference, which is like I built this public
Yeah.
audience and reputation, and if it goes horribly wrong, or even if it's just a bit lame, um, the cost of that going wrong is more significant for me than it is for other
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Um, I've sort of built this reputation on the assumption that I'm good at doing this kind of thing, and if it goes badly, then my reputation kind of takes a big hit.
Yeah.
So that puts me in a position of like, ooh, I do need to have some degree of oversight about what's happening there. Um, there's this thing of like kind of balancing uh, rights and responsibilities or something like making it stable or like rational kind of governance. Um, but on the other hand, I don't want to exaggerate the differences between us, you know, and like it's not going to be fun if it's basically it's my show and everyone's, you know, has to keep me satisfied or something like that. It's going to be
Mhm.
really that'd be really unfun for everyone involved, I think. So there's this art form to like trying to be honest about the way that we're showing up in different levels of investment, without exaggerating that difference.
Okay. Yeah. And how does the money part work? Like, uh, are you going to be profitable? And have you talked about how to? Yeah, I know you said you and Nati are like financially responsible if it goes wrong, but if it goes very well, what happens then?
I mean, this we still have to talk about this more with our team.
Mm,
Um, one thing that's really obvious is we raised 50 grand from our friends and we told them we're going to pay them back at the end of the year.
yeah.
So, um,
Oh, end of
uh,
2025.
well, like April 1st,
Okay, got it.
because we move in on April 1st, so we go over the year. So that means we have to at least earn 50 grand. Um, and as I was doing the modeling, I basically, you know, did a budget and tried to set things at a point where it's like, I don't know if you've done financial projections and stuff like this. It's kind of this weird art form of just making a whole bunch of different guesses that all interlock and make you try and tell yourself a nice story about what's going to happen based on a lot of speculation. But the story that I told is we're going to repay the loans, extract like 80 grand in salaries for the people that are, you know, there's four of us living there that are going to be putting a lot of energy to make the thing work.
20K each then? Or the sum 80K? Yeah.
Yeah, 80K in total. And that there'll be like a 20% profit margin for the house company,
Mm,
to sort of like leave a buffer in there. So what actually turns out in reality, we'll see. It's quite it's quite a puzzle as well. Like I really want to be inclusive and financially, like I really want the place to be affordable for people to come and spend time there. I don't want people to be excited about coming and then see the price and be like, oh, this is really, I'm not the
yeah.
class of person that can come. But also it takes a huge amount of work and there's a big risk on us. So it's like we have to be compensated. So yeah, trying to set the pricing in the right place is a big element of what makes this stressful, I guess, you know.
Yeah. I mean, for me at least, when I was organizing my big event in Turkey, like money was definitely the scariest and the part where I just doubted myself the most. And
Hmm.
everyone says Teapot has a money shadow, and like, yeah, it's a very rich topic. I feel like, yeah, God, the question of inclusion as well. Like, I'm actually so you recently like did a little anonymous survey about like how much does everyone make in rent, or sorry, how much does everyone pay in rent? Um, and yeah, I'm kind of curious about like what you were thinking there and why you asked that question. If you're gonna do anything with that information that you got.
I was thinking, my Twitter audience is a very strong overlap for who do we expect to come to the house. Maybe like 70% of the house people will be have heard about us through Twitter, I would guess. Um, and trying to set the price for people to spend a week with us is such a shot in the dark because it's like um there's this insane property market in Barcelona because it's like a hot destination. So like on the one hand, people are paying incredible money, like thousands and thousands for a crappy room in the middle of town. And then on the other hand, the Spanish economy at large is really weak, and the locals are comparatively really broke compared to all of these like digital nomad types like us that are moving in.
Mm.
And the locals are the reason this place is good. So it's like I feel it feels pretty rude to be part of the movement of gentrification, like pushing out the people who created something really awesome and
Mhm.
pricing them out. Um, so I'm conscious of like imagining what some of the local, there'll be local people here that might be paying, they've got rent control in on a 5 year lease or something, and they'll be paying 300 euros a month or something for their room.
Yeah.
Um, and then we're saying like, oh, if you want a private room in our place, it's going to be like 700, 800 a week or something like that, a week,
Yeah.
not a month.
Week. Yeah.
Uh, and I imagine them seeing it and just being like, oh God.
Mm. So not even
Uh,
not even because you imagine having locals come to stay, but even just the optics of them seeing you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
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 Um, and the reason I surveyed people on Twitter about what rent they're paying was like, I always knew that there was a high variance, but I wanted to actually see how the numbers play out. And what I saw was like the surprisingly large cluster of people paying less than 300 or 400 euros a month,
Wow.
which to me is like absurdly low,
Yeah.
just given what I've been paying the last few years.
Where are
And
they?
then I don't
Yeah.
know. Uh,
Yeah, you didn't put any like other questions on your it was just like a number.
yeah,
And
well, I didn't want to get too far into the. It's like if you want to get into the
yeah,
full details, then you start doing a proper statistical
yeah,
project. And I didn't have the. I just wanted to know what are my Twitter followers paying in rent.
yeah.
That was the
Okay.
question. Um, and I think the center of the normal distribution is like around $1,000 a month or something. And but there's a kind of no end. There's no top end. It's like a lot of people paying 2 or 3 grand, and then a surprising number of people paying five, and a handful of people paying 10. Like,
10 grand.
yeah, 10 grand a month in their rent. It's just like, goodness me. Okay, we're sampling from a diverse array. And so like one of the things I've always done with my businesses is try and strike a balance between being profitable and being accessible.
Mm.
And that usually looks like a sliding scale for prices, or there's a set price, but then there's also a scholarships or discounts available.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I've been just strategizing about how to do the pricing on this. And one idea that I had briefly was just that, well, what if we just say the price is whatever the rent that you pay at home, that's how much you pay for a room with us. Knowing that some people are paying 3 grand a month and other people are paying 300 a month, and that it'll all kind of balance out. Um,
I mean, that's such a cool
that's,
model. I really love that.
yeah, I don't know if it's practical or not, but I think it's a
Yeah.
funny idea.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess as again as an organizer, like I think every especially Twitter organizer or just organizers in general, like struggle with this and have come up with all kinds of schemes to make their stuff accessible. And um and there's like a balance between like being like truly flexible and then as the organizer like really wanting to make sure the numbers at least kind of work out. Um yeah, do you could say more about I mean how you've done it in the past? I think
Hmm.
like for me for instance, I I was like very risk averse in my pricing. And so I like, for instance, only made a low income ticket available if we sold extra support. Like I always made sure
Right,
the averages were going to work out.
right. Yeah. I mean, I think it really makes sense to be risk averse. Like, I'm extremely biased in this, but I do believe that like organizers are worth their weight in gold and need to be protected at all costs. And one of the reasons that we don't have, like, one of the reasons that we're in a state which I believe is like, basically like a crisis of a lack of social fabric, a lack of belonging, like a crisis of loneliness and atomization, is because the incentives are lined up in a way where it doesn't make sense to be an organizer. Um, where like Jess, who I think is the sort of like Mother Superior and Queen and Empress of Twitter organizers is earning like 20 grand a year, and half of her guests that are coming to her events are earning 200 grand a year. And that's not hyperbole, it's just literally what's going on. That's kind of messed up, like it's fine to be able to do that for a short time, but at a certain point, you get to where I'm getting, turned 40 a couple of months ago, and going like, I would like to be able to retire one day, you know,
Yeah.
which means I'm going to need a livelihood and some property.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's there's definitely a strong impulse of like, hey, these are my friends. I want to be inclusive. We should make it as cheap as possible for that reason. But that kind of generous impulse, I think, simultaneously is like undervaluing the organizer's role and
Yeah.
making it less attractive to be an organizer. And so like we actually have to make organizing sustainable.
Yeah.
Um, and to do the long-term stuff like we're trying to do, it needs to be not just like, oh, I hope this works out. It's like, no, 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 it needs to actually pay me a salary.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's tough. I think I've usually structured it like, what's the smallest number of ticket sales I could make where it would still feel like an okay event, that it wasn't a failure, and I would aim my break even at that point.
Mm.
And then anything more on top of that is like a mixture of profit and, oh, I can be more generous with the discounts.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and I have to say, like, the people who need the discounts are in two different categories.
Okay.
Like, one category is someone who's just like right at the early stage in their career, and they just can't earn good money and they're on their way. And we just love including them because they're awesome people, and we trust that it'll be reciprocated somewhere down the line. And then there's the other category, which may even be the larger fraction, which are people who are just not very mature or organized or pragmatic, and they're just kind of bad with money, and they're
Yeah.
unreliable, and they're kind of freeloaders.
Huh.
Like, I hate to say it, but it's like a surprise. Like, all of my events, there's always like a scholarship option.
Mhm.
And there's a very high correlation between like the people who flake out at the last minute and the people who got a
Oh.
scholarship, or the people who come and then turn out to be super erratic and really difficult to be around. Or yeah, there's just like a lot of problems that seem to come along with that subgroup. Um, so as the older I get, the more sort of like jaded I get about including people that don't have a lot of money, because it's like, ooh, what is going on in your whole life story that says you don't have that results in you not having any
Right.
money, you know?
Okay.
Isn't
Okay.
that outrageous that I just said that?
I know, taboo. Um, I mean, I have like a lot more to like if we can like move on to another topic at any point, but um because I was just talking to somebody who um uh actually someone you introduced me to who, let's see how to put this. Basically, he was running a giant community project that involved large amounts of money, and one of his partners had this kind of spirit of like, yeah, we want to give out money to everyone, we want to be inclusive. And in Berlin, it's very like, huge solidarity focus, huge like lefty, like give out money to the, oh, you can't pay rent, like just come stay anyway, and you can, I'm sure you'll pay it back, whatever. And then my friend who left this project because of this tendency was saying that like actually he prefers to filter people on the basis of like um whether they have the shit together, basically. And he was saying like, yeah, like there's cool people, like broke artists, whatever, but at the end of the day, like money is can be a very good filter for like, do you have a vision, do you have
Mm.
uh I don't quite love this concept, but like agency, do you have like, yeah, do you have the like ability to make something happen. And actually he says that filters for high quality people. And I sort of like, I was like, oh, that's very interesting. First of all, yeah, that does sound very taboo to say. Um, but also in my experience of like running and attending teapot events or just being in the scene, there is definitely a big like there's like a different dynamic that I see, which is that like uh this is also kind of awkward to say, but like a lot of the really cool people or the good posters are pretty broke, and then you get the like high earners who I don't know, may or may not be cool, may or may not have good vibes, but they're there kind of subsidizing their
Mhm.
cool broke friends, or like, buying their courses, or like
Yeah.
paying for their camp tickets. And yeah, so there's a strange like inversion of that. Yeah, I don't know, there's like two like stories you could tell. Like one where like you the one that's kind of the inconvenient story where like the wealthy mid vibes people pay for their cool friends to come or hang out. And the other story, which is like, I don't know if it's more optimistic or it's at least more convenient for organizers, where like money is kind of a good filter in some ways. And I'm wondering, yeah, how you
The
think of that.
problem is like there's a lot of people that have money and that have that don't have a creative bone in their body, you know, like they've just taken the default path step by step by step and they've wound up a kind of like passionless person that has an okay salary. You know, it's not I think there's a lot of false negatives if you take money as your filter. And
Yeah,
then there's a lot of people as well. The other false negatives is just like someone who inherited a bunch or someone who got lucky with crypto in the early days, or where it's like that doesn't necessarily tell you anything about how serious they are or about if they have their shit together or what their vision is or anything. So like it is a convenient story. I spent 30 seconds like really like, oh yeah, I could say that, but it doesn't fully ring true for me.
yeah.
Um yeah, it's a bit of a mess. And again, like the reason that I'm building scene infrastructure, uh, when you have a dense network of people who know each other intimately,
Mm,
you can kind of handle all this stuff somewhat organically. We just know like, oh yeah, Jim got lucky and Jim lives off like a trust fund and has 500 grand a year to spend, and he just kind of like quietly makes things happen in the background. And Jack's dead broke, but he's like so generous with his time and is kind of acts like a pastor for the community and takes care of everyone.
right.
And you know, like that, you can kind of you start to, and this is the whole Dunbar thing, right? Like underneath the Dunbar
Right.
number of 150 people, you can just informally keep track of like all the
Yeah.
tallies and it works itself out.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I feel like that sort of keeping track of the characters in the scene was a little bit of the role that I played at Tree Week.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
I mean, it's definitely the kind of one part of community organizing that calls to me.
Yeah. And
Mm.
as an organizer, like to me, part of my responsibility is figuring out the business model and telling people what's the minimum amount they can pay so that I'm not going broke. Like that's on me, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
and no one else is going to figure that out for me. I've got the best information in that, so I've got to be clear about what I need.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Hmm. Hmm.
And let's say as well, the other important part of the story is for us to even be able to move into this place, uh, because we're fresh immigrants in the country and we don't have a track record. The landlords are really nervous about renting to us
Yeah.
because of the way that there's very strong protection for renters in Spain, which means landlords are really skeptical about who they let move in because it's really hard to get rid of someone. And so they usually want to see a lot of guarantees about your income.
Yeah.
And as we're new in the country and we don't have the guarantee of income, they need to see the rent paid up front on day one
Yeah.
for the year. And we just couldn't do that alone. You know, we don't have that kind of savings lying around. Um, and so that was the most like incredibly uplifting part of this project was putting out the request saying, hey, I
Yeah.
want to do this thing. I need to raise 50 grand. Could any of you lend me the money? And
Yeah.
immediately, like literally within a couple of hours, had the job done.
Oh, that's so. I mean, that's beautiful. It's like, I mean, it's like a mega version of what I've seen. Like, hey, help me get to Vibe Camp, and then within like three replies, it's done.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Can you talk more about that? Because I feel like that's actually a really cool part of the story, and I mean, not accessible to everyone, and maybe other organizers who are like they feel money is a bottleneck.
Yeah.
I want to understand like how you get to that point.
Yeah. I mean, I guess this is what I meant before when I said about I built this reputation. It's like I
Yeah.
have invested in demonstrating credibility and building relationships with people so that when the time comes and I make a request like that, it's actually reasonably likely that people are going to come through
Yeah.
and say like, "Oh yeah, we've seen Rich, we understand." Like I've tried to be really transparent about how I think about all these topics.
Yeah.
And so I think the people who came through with the money, most of them have a pretty good sense of how I think. And they were primed and ready to say yes without having to ask any difficult questions beforehand.
Yeah.
Because their questions had already been answered because of the way that I've been transparent over the last couple of years.
Hmm.
Um, so that is a promising sign that people in the scene, yeah, agree with my sense that organizers need to be taken care of, like that we're doing something important. That so I can hold a kind of a superhumanly large Rolodex in my head. That's my role,
Yeah.
but I can't do that and also earn a huge amount of money so that I can bankroll these
Yeah.
generous projects for the community. So like all other people are out there earning money and this is a way that we can collaborate. We can each specialize in our
Yeah.
different contributions. That yeah, it's just really gratifying to like have that wider network on board.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I found it really beautiful. Can you say more about the details of like the deal you struck? And
Yeah, it's really
and the
funny.
logistics.
Um, so I wanted a loan rather than a gift because I want, so there's like three options, right? There's a gift, there's a loan, and there's an investment. I didn't want a gift because I want this thing to have a business model that's self-sustaining.
Mm,
Um, and I didn't want investment because I don't want to feel the pressure of like having to turn a large profit that has to repay people, like ongoing returns for their early investment. And so the loan is the space in the middle where it's like, we're going to pay you back, and that means the business model has to make sense.
yeah.
But we're not giving up any control and we're not motivated by generating a huge return that rewards all of these investors.
Hmm.
Um, and I was talking to people about interest rates and so on, and the way that it came out, and so I put all 10 of them in a Telegram group, so everything's transparent with each other. And they collectively negotiated me down to 0% interest. It was
Okay.
really nice. It was really nice.
Yeah. Can you say more about that? Like,
Uh, I think a couple of people were like, they put in 5 grand each, so it's not that much money. We were talking about like 4 or 5% interest or something. It's like a few $100,
I paid
and
the same amount.
everyone paid the same in the end, yeah.
Okay.
And I think the paperwork and the overhead of like having to claim, pay tax on the income, and people were like, I don't really want this, and I'm not motivated by,
Wait, income?
you know, yeah, like if I repaid the loan with interest, they have to claim the interest as income,
Oh, yes. Okay.
and then they have to pay tax on that.
Yeah.
So then it winds up just being like,
Yeah.
what's the point? Um, and people explicitly saying, one person said, I really don't want to make profit from usury, which I'm like, that's old school, and that's really solid.
Lindy, yeah.
And I just kind of vaguely promised perks instead of
Ah.
interest. So whether that's like come and stay with us for free, or like I've got half an idea about running a retreat specifically about money and like good use of money. How do you put your money to like positive ends and get all those people in for free or something like that. Like we'll do
Right.
um some expression of gratitude for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing to have aligned people backing it where
Yeah.
I just feel like I've got full confidence from them to just do it the way that we think is right. Like one of the first things I did was like spent a decent chunk of money investing in these tactile transducers, which are these like massive bass shakers for weird sonic experiments.
Wait, are those the
Uh
things where like someone built a bed that plugs
yeah,
into a speaker? Oh my God. Wait, that
yeah,
was the
bass
first thing you
beds.
bought? Okay.
First thing
Okay.
I bought was a bass bed. And I let them know and everyone's celebrating, like, oh, it's so great that you're spending the money on that.
Yeah, I thought you needed the full
Which
50K for the house rent.
Yeah, well, it's not like I have zero
Okay.
dollars to start from, you
All
know.
right. All right. Little base beds to start. Yeah, that's great. Very
That's part of the vision,
potentials.
and people were excited about that, so that was a relief. I am trying to keep a lid on that, like not being frivolous. I am trying to be prudent. Um, but yeah, it's like the space actually has to have appeal, it has to be a place that people want to go. And
Oh,
part of that is there's going to be good people there. There's a beautiful swimming pool. It's in the forest. There's this amazing, amazing, enormous tree. We're calling it Casa Tilo because it's a
mm,
Tilo tree, a linden tree.
beautiful.
Um, and there's a dining table underneath the tree set up for 30 people with fairy lights hanging above it. And I'm just like, that to me is the dinner under that tree for me is kind of like the whole central experience of the house.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we're trying to make the house attractive, like it has to be a place that people are just like intrinsically motivated to go to.
Mhm.
And buying a base bed so people can have a weird vibrational experience is part of that.
No, it's so spiritually correct for you, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Thanks.
yeah.
Thanks.
No, it's like you're the a giant talisman of like richness or something.
Yeah.
Rich
Yeah.
meaning your name, not
Yeah.
to both.
I'm looking at a more of these spiritually correct talismans at the synthesizer shop, and they're so expensive that I'm like, take it easy, dude. Take it easy. You can buy that in 6 months if things are going well.
Yeah, yeah. Spiritually correct talismans can be expensive, but don't have
Yeah, there's no upper limit.
to. Cool. Wow. Yeah, I feel like the question of perks for donors or patrons or believers is it's like very fun on the one hand, but also kind of,
Mm,
yeah, it's like definitely a creative puzzle. Like I remember Vibe Camp was trying to figure out a similar problem for like what to do for maybe people who donated or something like VIP
yeah,
and
yeah,
and it's like a whole question of how you relate to them and like how transactional it feels.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you know, like, earlier in this conversation, you mentioned in passing that this community project in Berlin, I introduced you to someone there.
Mhm.
Um, and this is something that I'm doing all day, every day, is making useful introductions.
Yeah.
Um, and that's like a favor that I've been doing to everyone that I come in contact with over the last few years. Like one of the funders who came on board said, like, Rich, I mean, you introduced me to most of my best friends now. And so it's kind of like I don't expect to be paid for that. I don't
Yeah.
expect a perk for that. I'd like to be in a spirit of like mutual generosity that doesn't have to have any kind of quantification on it. That
Yeah.
feels natural to me. But I think a lot of people it feels weird to say this about myself, but I think they kind of feel like they're part of a network of generosity, and they see me as being generous and outward focused, like altruistic. So
Oh, I see.
yeah, I don't think they need. I don't think there's anyone in the group that's really just like, I need special status and I should get something.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's that's a really nice, like they're very subtle skills. Um, Again, back to the sort of like topic of money and people who have money but not much else or whatever, or like there's an interesting thing in like a quote unquote community when um like the optimistic vision is everyone has their own special thing they contribute and we, some people trade money, some people trade their connecting skills, some people trade their space holding skills, and then there's like some people who feel like they don't have anything to contribute or something. And yeah, I feel like also you maybe take a special interest in those people. We touched on it earlier a bit. And like
Yeah.
helping each other level up.
Yeah.
um I don't know if there's a question there, but yeah, it's like the community organizers are maybe like the people who have the most legible non-money skills or something, and maybe what they're doing is like giving everyone a little piece of that, but also hopefully giving everyone a piece of the ability to start doing it themselves or something.
And this is instrumental for me. Like it's like a foundational piece of like my main project is about belonging. And what I've learned is that contribution is one of the most straightforward ways to find belonging.
Hmm.
And I think the reason that these Twitter gatherings that are so co-created, like the reason they're exciting is because people get a chance to offer their thing. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm really into this like particular therapeutic modality, or I like this kind of music, or I really love cooking for people.
Yeah.
And you get to show your generosity and you show your heart and you show what your gift is. And
Yeah.
people recognize you for it. They're like, "Oh, you're the one who did the dance workshop. Oh, that was amazing. That blew my mind." And
Yeah.
like that sort of mutual recognition that you get after contributing something creates a lot of contact, a lot of like um entanglement in each other.
Mm.
Um, and I think at the base level, the stuff of like the kind of mundane housekeeping stuff of like tidying the room, cleaning up after meals, cooking some food, making someone a cup of tea. Like that's like a entry level, anyone can do that.
Mhm.
And then you ideally, and I think this is what we're going to be facilitating a lot in our events there is like inviting people to continuously step up and what they're willing to offer and contribute. And kind of grow into their sense of identity based on what it is that they do have a unique talent. They do have something that they're like peculiarly passionate about. And I want that to shine in our space.
Okay. Yeah. How do you encourage that or encourage maybe I'm thinking specifically more of people who again like maybe don't have confidence, don't think they have anything to offer, but also then there's like, oh well you can do the unsexy stuff like cleaning or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's a thing about making it extremely explicit, like how someone can contribute at
Okay.
the at just to get the wheels turning. Like I've noticed in one of our events we did that once we kind of put up a system where all of the tasks that needed to be done were put on post-it notes. And once it became visible, there was someone there who was kind of like had been kind of out of sorts and not really finding their place. Suddenly they're like, "Oh, I will cook dinner tomorrow." It's like they could have volunteered any time to cook dinner, but because the post-it notes were going past on the wall, they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, somehow it just gave them the level of legibility or
Yeah,
somehow
yeah,
made it obvious in a way that before was a bit too ambiguous or something."
right.
So I think there's that kind of legibilizing structures. And then again, it's part of the hospitality role is giving people targeted encouragement and just being like, oh, maybe you'd be willing to like co-host this thing with me, or how about, oh, I really loved it when you did X. Maybe you could do more of that, or this kind of um encouragement for people to flourish.
Yeah. Okay. Um that what came to mind is that that sounds like well, like I know you, Rich, personally are very good at doing that, are very good at like sort of nudging like the people on the outskirts a bit to join the fold or showing ways they can help. But when there's 30 people, how do you scale the rich
Yeah,
inclusivity?
yeah. One thing is, I was just talking to our mutual friend Jocelyn about the incubator, and she's included this thing called the whiz bang. So like on Sunday, everyone is gonna like meet at a certain time, and they're all gonna clean the house at once. Um, I thought that was a really cool concept. It's like super easy. It's kind of fun. You have music on, like everyone gets involved, and it doesn't take very long. And then suddenly, you're like, wow, the whole house looks way better.
I was very impressed by those. Yeah, they're cool.
So everyone gets that feeling of satisfaction of a job well done, and like, oh, I have some ownership of the place, and everyone gets a chance to ask that awkward question of like, oh, where is the bleach or the cloths or whatever, and so like the barriers to contribute drop. I think that's helpful. Another piece is like um, the kind of memes that you invoke into the community. So like I've tried to use my status as a highbie to say like one of the ways to be cool in this community is that you are considerate of the lobies and you really make an effort to include them. And to me, it's not a fun party if only the cool kids are having a good time. Like you just have to make efforts to include everyone. And I'm going to shun you if you don't. So I'm just kind of playing high school games, but trying to do it for good. I think that's part of it. Uh, yeah, some people are uniquely talented at it as well, and other people kind of wouldn't know the first place to start.
Right, right. Hmm. I'm wondering if we want to get into the whole high B low B thing. Um, it's been done.
It's been quiet for a while. Maybe we should let sleeping dogs lie.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess, I mean, in that vein, I guess I was just wondering, like, what would you do if you had a 30-person gathering and some people are not having a good time and you're just one person, you can't go around like I have
Mm.
this like visual image of like a dog like sort of nudging the like more lethargic sheep or the other, like with its nose like, come on, get up, like you can go, have a good time too.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
But there's only one dog.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I tweeted about this today. They should invent a leader who's neither neglectful nor overbearing.
Right.
Because it's a joke, because it's like wherever there's a spectrum between those 2 points, and wherever you land, you're going to be doing the wrong thing for someone.
Yeah, yeah.
And at some of my events, I've gone too far one way, and other events, I've gone too far the other way. And we're going to just keep experimenting at different points. I think the overbearing end of the spectrum is the like more highly structured, more expectation of facilitation. You're going to have more people getting up in your face and being like, "Hey, I've noticed that your face looks gloomy. What are you experiencing? And would you like help with that?"
Hmm.
And then at the neglectful end of the spectrum is like people are left to their own devices. They have their own experience. As a host, I'm responsible for there's food in the fridge and there's hot water in the showers. You are responsible for everything else. And both are good. Both are good. Like leaving people to their own devices is like an extraordinary developmental opportunity. And there's stuff that people can only learn once they've been thrown in the deep end, and it's only them who's responsible and no one else is coming to save them. Like that's really good. But it's also very high variance doing it that way. You have some people will have a great time and other people have a really bad time. And yeah, so I will oscillate back and forth. I think we haven't confirmed, but I think we'll do a micro solidarity camp in the late summer. And I think that one's going to be highly structured. And there'll be a whole process around as you arrive, you sort of go through a process to identify what's your appetite, like what do you want to learn about, where do you want to extend yourself, what support do you need. I'm thinking it's almost like boot camp, like it's quite involved, um, and that everyone's going to be kind of sweating and pushing themselves out of their comfort zone, and then like get to celebrate the achievements, and that
Yeah,
sort of festive energy comes from how hard I push myself out of my comfort zone.
yeah.
And then there'll be other events which are much more like the co-living weeks that we're doing. They're going to be much lighter than
Mhm.
that. There'll be like opportunities for people to come together and coordinate and get emotional support if they want it, but it'll be much more an expectation of like things are optional. It's like a buffet and you can come and eat if you want to, but no one's going to knock on your door and tell you like, hey, we haven't seen you in a while. Are you coming?
Um, okay, this is interesting because uh, there's a huge variance in styles, like on the spectrum of neglectful to overbearing, just even within only your events.
Mhm.
And I forgot what I was going to connect this to, but um, oh, and then with the like it, you're saying like, oh, you go back and forth, and then it takes a while to find the correct place. But as we sort of settle, like you talked about this on Twitter, like there is no right place. You're gonna piss off, or you're gonna like annoy some people no matter what, and therefore, so finding the right place is more a question of like the right place for like with the kind of event you as a leader are happiest to host or something,
Yeah.
or the kind
Yeah.
of people, yeah, the kind of preference you want to um, surround yourself with. And mm, maybe one thing is like, if given that there's so much variance, again, just within your events, and in other Twitter events, I just haven't seen much. I feel like there's not enough focus. Or sorry, let me back it up. When I ran my event, um, one thing I realized pretty soon after like getting into the middle of it, like we were halfway through, or whatever, was like, I should have advertised this way more specifically. I should have
Mm.
like been way more detailed, filtered out way more people, or filtered in way more people, just been really clear about the kind of vibe I want. And um and of course that's like kind of an impossible task. You don't know until you're there, whatever. But I think there is a sort of tendency to like make the invitation very open and very like sound appealing to many people. But yeah, what I haven't seen in the Twitter camp advertisement or like just event ad like calls to, invitations is this is going to be this kind of event with this kind of structure or this kind of lack of structure. It is
Mm,
not good for these people and maybe better for these people. I haven't seen much of
mm,
that, and
mm.
yeah, that seems very important actually. Like weird that that's not really present at all. Because again, there's the temptation to be like, yeah, everyone, it's gonna be a great time, but not for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, this is it's a challenge like this. On the one hand, you've got the sort of financial incentive of you want to get people there to make the books balance.
Mhm.
And then there's also, I think, a more serious thing, which is like I don't want to over prescribe what's going to happen. Like I want to leave quite a lot of space for emergence and surprise.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't want to put too tight
Right.
of a definition on it. But also when I'm actually at the event, it's very clear to me what's in and what's out of brief, you know.
Of what?
uh, what's in the brief and what's out of the brief. You know, you can really clearly see like, oh, like I remember I wasn't hosting, but I was at a really awesome festival in New Zealand. Um, and it's like a party place, like everyone's taking drugs. But there's certain kinds of drugs that we're taking, and then you see someone who's taking the wrong drugs, and you're like, dude, what the fuck? Like,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's tricky. I mean, I think one of the big takeaways I got from interviewing Jocelyn about the incubator was one of the reasons they had such a high rate of people saying it was amazing was because the intention was so clear and that they
Yeah.
were really exclusive. They're really like, we're doing this kind of activity, and if you don't fit that, you're not welcome.
Yeah. That was the
They had a
most
lot of
tailored
confidence in that.
invitation I'd ever seen, and it like worked out very well for them, I think.
Yeah. So I want to follow suit and do the same thing, but it feels premature to do that before we're in the house. Like I want to be in the house and
Yes.
have see who are the first people that show up and kind of cook that intentionality with them in the first few months,
Mm.
which is maybe an invitation. It's kind of like I'm curious about who's listening and who also believes in investing in scene infrastructure and wants to build social fabric. And can you please come and hang out with us in the next couple of months? Because I think those early founding people that are involved are really going to set the tone of
Yeah.
what happens next, you know?
Yeah. Ooh. That's actually itself kind of a compelling invitation. Like,
Mhm.
to sort of, I'm thinking of like kind of getting people in early, getting in people who maybe are like not so confident in their own like the worth of their own vision or something, or that they have a vision, and sort of inviting them like, hey, no, look, if you like come participate, if you come early on, there's maybe more like more ask like we're gonna ask more of you in terms of the energy you put in, but also
Yeah.
you get a big say. And I haven't seen really people talk about that. Like for instance,
Mm.
like people who came to the first vibe camp or the first few vibe camps or something, like yeah, they set the tone of the scene, and like that's another incentive to just try new things or to like take risks by being an organizer or getting on the ground floor. That it's
That's
not
another perk. It's another perk for the funders as well. It's like
right. Yeah,
I care about them being happy and I want them to think the place is awesome. And so part of that means that informally they're already having an influence about what kind of activities happen there.
right. Yeah. Like you mean just from their input or something, or what they are
I
excited
mean,
about?
partly from their explicit input, where it's like people saying, I think you should have this kind of event, or like, I'd love to go to something like this. Can you make something like that happen?
Yeah,
But it's also more implicit than that. It's just like what I know about them, and I want them to be excited and satisfied with where they put their money. Um, yeah, I think it's probably the bigger influence is going to be informal, less about anyone making a specific request and more about me thinking about, well, what would these people be excited to join in?
yeah. Do you have any like I feel like advice or something, but I don't know to whom. I don't know
Hmm.
for people just looking to get into having preferences, into shaping scenes, into doing uh um illegible energy work or something.
Yeah, I mean the advice is always the same for me. It's like find the others because you can't do this alone. It's definitely a team sport. And then move in measured iterative steps of increasing ambition, you know, like increase the scope of what you can contribute, shape, hold, lift. Like, um, if you've been lurking online for a long time and you're in a phase where you're like under socialized and over anxious, like just lift a little thing. Like go to one of the office hours in Berlin or New York or the Bay Area and bring a plate of cookies that you baked, and everyone are going to be so delighted to meet you and so grateful that you made these delicious cookies. Like that,
Yeah.
that's a great place to start. And then if that's easy for you, then it's like, well, why don't you host afternoon like a picnic, like a small thing that's not a lot of effort, but it's doable, or a dinner party. And you can just basically like gradually escalate how much you contribute, how much you offer, what risks you take on.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I just basically want to be surrounded by people that are taking the bigger picture seriously and taking some or sharing in the responsibility of like cultivating a social fabric that is wholesome and generous and good for everyone that's in it.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like I already am. Like I feel like there's a lot of us around, and I just want more of them. And I guess I want people to know how rewarding it is to do that too.
Hmm. My mind is right now on like, so the Berlin scene is kind of popping off.
Yeah.
We're having a renaissance because Emergent Vibe from Twitter just was visiting for a while, and he made a lot of stuff happen while he was here, including like the we started office hours um, every 1 or 2 weeks with me and Simon hosting now that he's gone, and we started like meeting all kinds of people who we'd never we'd like maybe we'd seen before but never interacted with, or just totally new people who were like, oh, you're in Berlin, you're on Twitter, I'd never seen you before, and this is great. Um, and now there's a group chat, and I'm like, and like there's a lot of events happening, but there's also a bit of like a, I feel like there's a very strong, and from my perspective, there seems like a very strong nucleus of like me and like the people around me, who are like hosting, but also there's other people hosting, which is really cool. Like now, like someone who I hadn't hung out with before hosted a hackathon, someone
Mm.
else hosted like a this and a that, and but sometimes like the people who are outside of the core, I find there's a little less, it's harder to get momentum. I don't know if like there's like a combo of things. Like one is like they're made like they just are less connected. So people are maybe like less likely to show up or just gonna cancel or whatever, or the invitation's less compelling. And maybe a second thing is like they're doing it wrong somehow. Not to victim blame, but like I don't know, like um, just throwing an event out there instead of getting like a lot of support for it or something.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and I can imagine that can be kind of daunting. Like I'm sure this has happened to me before, like just going into a place and like, I don't know, deciding I'm gonna take a big risk and like, yeah, I'm gonna host a big thing and then no one shows up, or um yeah, and so I think for some people, like your vision of like, oh, just start small and then build up is like, I think the how to build up gradually without like having huge like disappointing failures is like still not intuitive. Um
You will have disappointing failures. I will
yeah.
have disappointing failures. Like it sucks. Like that's the price of entry.
Yeah.
Like this wrenching
Okay, cool.
childhood feeling of like being unpopular because people didn't come to your thing.
Yeah.
Like that is part of the deal, and it's brutal. And you can do things to make it to sort of hedge and make it less likely that it's going to go badly, but
Yeah.
it's going to go badly. And that's part of the thing of like why I say start small. It's like, well, no one comes to your picnic. That's a little bit disappointing. But if no one comes to your $50,000 rental, that's very disappointing. So ease into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Well, I mean, I guess there are like concrete things that, as you said, like you can do to hedge against like full disappointment or something, but they're just not intuitive to people. And I'm wondering like how someone would learn. Maybe I should just
Yeah,
think about it. Freaking, you know.
I think it's interesting. Um, Different responses that people have to like as an organizer, how do you have the confidence to pull something off?
Yeah.
Um, and I think you in particular have been pretty strong, and a few others. I think Simon does this too. Have been pretty strong at like first I lock in a kernel of my closest homies who I know that I want them to be there. And if they're in, then it's sort of like, okay, well, we've got a critical mass and then we'll invite lots of more people.
Yeah.
I think I, in the past, have been more, I'm just fanatically certain of the vision. And if I have that depth of clarity about what I want, that'll be enough, build it and they will come.
Yeah.
And then today when I was talking to Jocelyn, I asked the same question about the incubator, and she said there was so much alignment in their core team
Hmm.
that because it was so they had this sort of like thriving teamwork. That was what gave her the confidence. She's like, whatever we produce is going to be awesome. So let's just build something.
Yeah.
So it's a different approach. Those are all three different approaches, I think.
Wait, the three approaches are have a core team. Second is just be single-mindedly determined with your vision. And the third is like both of those things. Have the core
Well,
team.
there's two different core teams. One is just like I want to make sure that there's four guests that I really want to be there, and if I
Yeah.
get a yes from them, then the thing's happening.
Yeah.
And then the other core team is like, yeah, there's such alignment between the
Mm,
co-hosts that we must be blessed. We must have the mandate of heaven.
totally. Yeah. Okay. Um, hmm. We didn't specify how long we want to keep talking for. I mean, in the calendar is like 10 more minutes. That's it.
Yeah, my attention span starts to drift shortly after an hour. So
Okay.
yeah.
Hmm.
I think I'm just like turning over and thinking about what else I want to have kind of on the record.
Yeah.
One of the things is my vision for this house is that it just supercharges my matchmaking capacity.
Ooh, I'm intrigued by
And
this.
that's partly about I just like the idea of my friends getting married and making babies.
Oh, you mean romantic matchmaking?
Well,
Okay.
partly.
Okay.
That's the most obvious use of the word. But then there's all kinds of other matchmaking too, which is like someone needs a job, someone wants to start a band and they need a drummer.
Yep.
Um, just that kind of hackathon energy of like, co-founders finding each other and getting that activation energy they need. Um, yeah, like starting group houses. A really good group house just needs like three people who are really on the vibe together and
Yeah.
where they're going to find each other and how they're going to get a bit of experience of living together and to know like this is, yeah, we definitely want to do this.
Mhm.
Like they're going to meet at a place like ours.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, definitely the romance thing is a big part of it. Like I think having a good marriage is like the main ingredient of my well-being.
Mm,
And um it's annoying how hard it is to replicate that. It's like I wish I wish there was a button you could press and like all the friends who want one will just find a good partner.
mhm,
And I think the dating the way that dating sucks, I think, is the kind of one of the most obvious symptoms of the disintegration of social fabric.
mm, mm.
Um, and with more densely tied networks, um, and more like wholesome gossip networks and things, it's much easier to make good relationships.
Yeah.
So that's part of the vision. And then I think the other part is something about healing, growth, development, um, becoming the person that you are, kind of liberation, expansion, like a place that doesn't just feel nice, you know. It's not just like, oh, we had a party and it was a good vibe. It's like, no, the good vibe was a symptom of people really celebrating what they're letting go of and celebrating the ways that they've grown and changed as a result of these relationships. Um, and again, it's like I don't want to be overly legible about this developmental project. Like I think it's kind of corny to get too much into detail about people's spiritual practice or the particular path that they're on. I think it's nice to just leave that ambiguous and private.
Yeah.
But I do see this as being a house where people are growing in significant ways. Um, Nati will be doing psychedelic therapy there.
Mm.
Um, and just the kind of people that are involved, there's all kinds of like healing modalities and psychotechnologies and stuff that will be happening in the house in various ways.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
So I see this as being an incubator of like good, wholesome ways of being human, growing together, finding
I
relief.
I had no idea about this part of your vision. I mean, and also I'm still a little unclear on how literal you mean it, and it seems like maybe a little quite literal, like having healer types or like just ambient, like yeah, there's a person doing therapy there and a person doing this there, and is that the vibe, or do you mean also like through the group events and yeah, it's a bit unclear to me.
Yeah, it's unclear to me too. Um, because I think the healing pathway is so the one that I'm interested in anyway, the healing pathway is so context specific. It's so personalized. I really don't believe that there's one particular modality. They're like, oh, if everyone just did IFS or if
Mhm.
everyone did ideal parent figure or whatever it is, think that they're going to find their big
Yeah.
breakthroughs. But I think the best of the events that I've run and the teapot events that I've been to, the reason I'm so passionate about them is because you see people taking massive leaps forward in their healing and development. And it's because of the exposure to diversity, where what someone needed was like a good, strong acid trip. And what
Hmm.
someone else needed was just like um, having someone tell them that they're beautiful for the first time.
Mm.
And what someone else needed was the nudging and encouragement to take the stage and play their songs in front of everyone for the first time.
Mm.
And yeah, someone else needed to find a new therapist. And there's like so many different needs
Okay.
that activate people into their next step. But yeah, I do see these events as like a way where you can temporarily visit your next stage of development.
Yeah. Okay. Um, and the matchmaking and connection topic is also very like ripe for me. If we can get into that a little bit. I was wondering, yeah, what so I know you like do this very intentionally, like on the one hand, like when you connected me to this person in Berlin, it was like you did it very, very well. Like, oh, you both have this interest that's kind of niche and very cool. Um, are you thinking of like both that and like just the serendipity of these events, or are you thinking like very deliberately about your invitations and who you invite to which week, or like having themed weeks, like this week is for people who are more
Hmm.
like this or that?
Yeah. Yeah. There's different, I think we're basically every month we're going to have, on average, every month there'll be like one event which is very focused on a topic,
Mhm.
and then one event which is much more open and just about connection and meeting
Mhm.
new people. So one that's thematic and one that's just open. Um, so we'll be doing both things, you know. So like right now I'm running a coaching group, and everyone in the group is leading an organization. And
Mhm.
the fact that they've all got that in common means that there's just so much juice in the conversation because they're like, oh, I've been there too. You know, that's so hard. And you get such payoff from having that shared
Yeah.
experience and alignment. But then on the other hand, diversity is awesome too. Like when you're a programmer and you're just like deep down in your programming problem, and then someone comes in who's like, we're doing finger painting today. Like that can be such a relief and like such a opening thing to have that different input come into your
Yeah.
system, you know. So both options are good for me. They require different structures. They have different invitations. Um, and the matchmaking thing, sometimes it's like an intentional one-on-one thinking about. I've been trying to develop this taste, like for the romantic matchmaking. I feel like the romantic matchmaking is the hardest type of all the types of matchmaking. And so if I can get good at that, then I'm good at all of them. But it's like trying to develop a taste of like when I'm with someone and I get to know more about their sense of humor or like what makes them tick. And then 3 weeks later, I'm with someone else and I'm like, oh, hey, they have the same, they both like licorice, you know, like they're both, and by licorice, I mean, you know, they've both got the same spiritual peculiarities.
Yeah. It's very strange people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like
Okay.
your custard and your jam, like, dude, go together, like, real good. Um, So some of it is this intentional one-to-one mapping, which
Mhm.
is really for me like quite a challenge, and I'm learning how to do it. And I haven't got many successes yet, but I feel like I at least am heading in the right direction. But the other part of it is much more many to many. It's not one to one. It's just like this digital cloud that I mentioned feels like high potential, low density. And if you just get those people together and you increase the density, it's like all these connections start forming.
Yeah.
And that doesn't require any specific knowledge about any of the individuals. You just create the environment for them to meet each other.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like my autistic special interest of social engineering has been on full display for the last hour.
Nice. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm here for, to like peel back the, hey, everyone, look at this part of Rich.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh. And I'm just thinking of like, yeah, you have like, I don't know, a programmer's week, and then it overlaps. Some of them stay afterwards, and then it overlaps with the people who came early to the finger painting week, and then the finger painting week, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot of
Yeah. It's gonna be good. Yeah, we start in 2 weeks, so I'm like currently in the phase of just projecting into the future and organizing and planning and getting things squared away. And I'm looking forward to check in again in a couple of months when we're actually underway and see how the reality matches the expectation.
yeah, yeah. I'm very excited. Um, yeah, I think the when I briefly like was dreaming about running a massive community space, just because like the opportunity seemed like it might be possible or something. I don't know, it was my first taste of like dreaming really big or something.
Mm,
And I kind of
mm.
liked it. It was terrifying, but like I was like, oh wow, I could do that. I could do a rich. I could do a borrowing like crazy amounts of money and like, you know, pouring my soul into this and investing in people and investing in myself. Um, yeah, I don't know. It felt very really going with this. Just yeah, actually I don't remember what I was going with that, but the
You
possibility.
know, though, it's so amusing to watch this pensive bunny, searching for the words. So you don't have to worry about losing your train of thought or something because it's like quite engaging philosophically.
Yeah. It's like
Um,
yeah.
I just wanted to say about like you can do this, and I think like you specifically, not you, anyone, like
Mhm.
you have developed specific capacities, and you're earning a place in the network where people recognize like, oh yeah, maybe we would actually be good at that, and if she was doing it, we'd come. Uh, and that's really cool to watch, and it's like it is. I think it developed a distinctly intentional developmental process of like increasing ambitions, and maybe you're not going to do it immediately, but it makes sense in your future.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I love this like idea of just like us all leveling up, raising the waterline, nudging each other up bit by bit. It's very cool.
Yeah, and I spent a long time living in a really, really amazing, awesome scene in New Zealand where I'm from, and I know what it's like. And I wonder how many people have never even really tasted it, have never even really been in a place where like, yeah, you just have that like limitless supply of friends and collaborators and instigators and partners, and yeah, it's really good. It's really good when you get that density and infrastructure and trust and shared norms and things. Like, extremely fun. It's like the
Cool.
funnest thing I know of.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels so far away to me, um but many things that I'm doing today felt like I wouldn't have dreamed of them before, and I'm sure you feel the same about a lot of what you're doing now.
And I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, Berlin is clearly popping off. Like, there's magical things happening. I mean, just you wait until summertime. Like,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Hmm.
you're a very wise bunny.
It's funny because it shows all the like, oh, like yeah, I'm pensive. I'm like this looking into space, I'm blinking, but it can't freaking show me nodding. Like I'm nodding a lot to what you're saying, but it is not making the movements. It's also nice because it's not showing me like, I don't know, sniffing my armpits or whatever, which I have been doing, but
Are
yeah,
they okay? I'm actually surprised. I'm like,
yeah, yeah.
"Hmm,
Yeah.
they're good."
Hmm. Yeah, I'm pretty excited with where I'm going, where you're going, where we're all going.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
I also I feel like a last thought is like it's very easy and very tempting to think of it as like, Rich, who is farther ahead than me, is like helping me level up or like he's pulling me up as well. But I had this tweet that I really liked that was like every single person, even the most like advanced or whatever people have like something to learn from every other person. And um yeah, that feels like a very important part of the kind of scene I want to have that's like the most rich to me is where like, oh no, I can teach rich stuff too. Or
mhm.
like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Or like some random person who I don't really, I don't know, don't think much of, or mm, doesn't come across as too impressive, whatever to me, like, oh, I can learn something from them too. I can level up from their presence or something. Um, yeah, that feels important to me, but it is still hard and like not an intuitive way to like see things, I think.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's like it's only a matter of getting to know each other more. I think that increases
Mm.
the surface area of how much we can learn from each other. This has been the fun thing for me with working a lot with Jocelyn. I feel like Jocelyn started out as a kind of like apprentice to me, and now it's really clear. It's like her and her crew are doing stuff that I'm just like, okay, I'm taking notes. That okay, yeah, I need to
Yeah.
do that. Um, so and I think that's more about us getting to know each other and understanding like how I'm learning a bit more about how she sees the world and what's obvious to her that's less
Right.
legible to me.
But it's
Um,
funny that like theoretically you could have learned something from her at any stage, even before she was like doing impressive stuff, but it's just not visible until, I mean, yeah, sometimes people, their true selves don't come, they're not visible until they start doing stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's fun to have you in the team with us. Like, I mean, we've talked very briefly, but I think you and I and a couple of other people should cook up a creative event this summertime. And that's, yeah, it's the kind of thing when I think about it, it's like, be quite lame if you weren't doing it. Like, I think you're going to add a real special cherry on top that like, will make it
Little
red.
zest.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
little acid.
zesty little banana. Mm. Little pensive bunny.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
I
That's
think it's a
all.
good place to leave it.
Yeah, that's all my thoughts on this.
Great. Thank you for interviewing me. I guess that's another implicit part of this project is I want to discover not just how to build myself a satisfying scene, but what are the patterns of scene building that can replicate in lots of places. So it's important for me to do it kind of open source.
Yeah.
Um,
Open source.
and yeah, I do want to extend the invitation to anyone that's listening. If you want to come and hang out in a new house in Barcelona, uh, we'll be happy to host you. We have a very rudimentary website, eltilo.casa. That's
Ooh,
Eltilo,
dot
eltilo.casa.
Casa. Whoa, cool. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wait, I thought you said you couldn't like advertise properly or something. Like, is
Yeah, so my next task is to make that website look completely anonymous and so it doesn't have any identifiable information on it. I haven't done
not
that
all
yet,
these
but
50 photographs of the house. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And that will be for private events for our friends. Uh, please go to that website to confirm your invitation.
Yeah. And yeah, Rich loves weirdos. Like really. He really loves weirdos. Anyone can be Rich's friend.
I will say though, because I have found my capacity for weirdos tested occasionally. If you ever have doubts about will Rich love me, the way to increase your lovability is to increase your curiosity about others.
About what?
Curiosity about other people.
Hmm.
That's the thing that distinguishes. the one that's like weird and fun from weird and like really hard to be around is the ones that are not curious about other people.
Cool. I love that as a prompt though. Like, what can other people do to increase their lovability to you?
Yeah.
I mean, something else is pretty universal, like curiosity about others is a very good one. Yeah.
I mean, I wrote a whole blog post called How to Have a Good Time with Richard D. Bartlett by Richard D. Bartlett. So if you want to know specifically my preferences for how to hang out, that's written down.
Right. Yeah, it's all there online. Read the
Yeah.
article, go to what is it, El Tilo da Casa, and then find out to be Rich's roommate.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Wise Bunny.
Thank you, Rich. Look forward
Been a
to
pleasure.
talking to you soon. Much love.
Ciao.
Bye.